In this video, we'll cover a book titled The Pyramid, How to Build It, How to Use It by Les Brown. The book goes for $200 on Amazon, but the PDF can be found for free online if you do some digging. The book is fascinating because it covers the idea of pyramid energy, and the author Les Brown believes that the pyramid receives and collects magnetic energy from the poles, cosmic rays, and radio waves. Les Brown believes through his experiments that pyramid energy makes things grow faster, larger, and will have a longer lifespan or a longer expiration date. He gives detailed instructions on how to build the proper pyramid, but I should mention that my limited research into the topic makes me believe that the pyramid would perform better if made out of copper and not wood, as Les Brown showcases in this book. I could be wrong about that, so take my opinion with a grain of salt, but I just thought I should mention it. I should also mention that my wife and I are expecting our first child this upcoming summer, so that's very exciting too. In addition to showing how to build pyramids of all types, the book is also going to show or it's going to explore the source of pyramid energy, discuss how the energy affects living cells, look into the use of pyramids in food production, discuss pyramids and food preservation, and discuss the different uses of pyramids. So let's dive right in. So this is the table of contents, just real quick. Let's glance at it to give us an idea. Chapter 1, Observations. Chapter 2, Why a Pyramid. Chapter 3, The Source of Pyramid Energy. Chapter 4, How the Energy Affects Living Cells. Chapter 5, The Use of Pyramids for Production. Chapter 6, Food Preservation. 7, How to Build a Pyramid. 8, The myriad uses of pyramids. And 9, Appendix. Instead of reading every single page, every single passage, I read the book once. It's really short, about 28 pages, and then for this reading I just skimmed through it and captured the more important passages so that I can read it and post it in this one video. So it's pretty cool, pretty neat. Let's go ahead and start. Chapter 1, Observations. Over the past few years since the first publicity on my pyramid in September 1974, I have had literally hundreds of requests for information on the subject of pyramids. It has become apparent that the only way I can accede to all these requests and still have time to pursue my aims with the pyramid is to write small monographs in expensive book form. These will get one started on building and using pyramids, and further discoveries will become the subjects of future books. I am including in this book discoveries I have made, as well as those made by friends and acquaintances across the North American continent and in other parts of the world. For the latter reports, I thank the discoverers and wish to take no credit for myself. I myself see the pyramid as a symbolic sunburst of knowledge, with rays emanating from the center. Following any one of these rays, one would learn who knows what. E.C. Ray being a new train of thought from a separate individual. Somewhere along the line, finally, all the rays would be incorporated into a circle in which they would all be interrelated. My own thing is the search for bigger, better, and more bountiful crops with which to feed the growing hordes already beginning to crowd the earth beyond endurance. We must prepare today for tomorrow. We must find new and unorthodox ways to produce nutrients, or possibly our children and for certain our grandchildren will face a real and ghastly danger of ending up the image of the perambulating human skeletons we see so frequently on our TV screens, listlessly suffering and awaiting a miserable death. It makes me sick to see it. Mankind must realize they are faced with a frightening, let's just say, fate. And this idea is comes up a lot in this book. his goal, Les Brown, of sharing this information with us is to prevent the lack of food that overpopulation causes, in a way. So that's definitely noble of him, but that's a very important goal of his that he makes in this book, and may not be as evident in this video because I may have just cut out a few passages that go over him stating just that this book is so that future generations have a better way of growing food. So keep that in mind. Chapter 2. Why a pyramid? The energy that keeps the world in balance and maintains its position in the universe, the energy that keeps us alive, and which is part and parcel of everything in this earth, is magnetic energy. The magnetic field is of a certain intensity, but since some objects care more receptive to it, they are affected by the energy more than are other objects. Paradoxically, this inequality of energy attraction is precisely what keeps everything on Earth in balance. Man's investigation of magnetic energy has allowed him to progress scientifically to his present-day standard of living. That investigation led to the development of electricity and the millions of machines, appliances, heating, lighting, and power that it gives to us. Without such progress, we would not know what a car was. There would be no television, radio, telephone, or computers. We would be living in a world as untouched as the day it dawned. While such a world might seem highly desirable now, man nevertheless saw what he thought would better his life, and he went after it. He realized that the magnetic force, if collected and condensed, would give him a force with which he could make inanimate objects move for him, and if he learned how to control it, the sky was the limit. But first, he had to find a means of collecting and then boosting it to suit his purpose, so electricity was born. Man's progression since then is history. That is, history as we know it. It is my theory, Les Brown, however, that long before man as we know him, from the Garden of Eden to the present day, was on this earth, there were beings of far greater intelligence in residence, who originated outside this earth. I believe they may have begun as we did and progressed similarly, often using their progress for the wrong purposes, seeking selfish gain for themselves, as man so frequently does today. I believe these beings became so advanced in their technology that they felt they could do without God. They felt they knew it all. Their inventions made them wealthy. Their wealth gave them power, and once that power developed, they believed they were masters of their own destiny. They felt they no longer needed God's help, and as a result were destroyed. Only those who lived in God's image survived. With His guidance, they resided on earth and used their advanced technology to benefit mankind. I believe these beings eventually escaped with their knowledge back to where they had come from originally, and, as evidenced by the numerous present-day UFO sightings, I believe they have been watching mankind progress along a similar path toward destruction, as did their own predecessors. They are warning us through psychics to change our ways before it is too late. In this modern age of greater acceptance of psychic phenomena, I suggest we heed such warnings, particularly those of such noted psychics as Edgar Cayce. And of course, that guy comes up in multiple different things that I research, which is a pretty cool thing. That cool synchronicity, as you get into one guy, then you start to look at something else completely. They kind of reference each other, which is cool. History has always repeated itself, but now we have a chance to break the repetition. If only we will listen. I believe these people of long ago were Atlanteans, and that they will return in the not too distant future. Not only are psychics trying to pass on the warnings of these people, but the Atlanteans also left us centuries ago the Pyramid Cheops, also known as the Great Pyramid. Keep in mind that the Great Pyramid of Egypt and the Cheops, or the Pyramid Cheops, Les Brown in this books later will refer to the Pyramid Cheops or Cheops. That's just a reference to the Great Pyramid of Giza. Their purported technology would have been the only such advanced technology in existence at the time, capable of building such structures as the pyramids. Even today's engineers admit that we could not duplicate the pyramid Cheops with present-day technology. My belief is that the Great Pyramid embodies pure truth, and we will only survive if we use truth as our basic principle. Those who do not will perish just as the majority of Atlanteans did before us. The Great Pyramid is a giant computer built in the past to contain our future. It is a great receiver and transmitter with tremendous power far beyond present-day man's imagination, and in its beautiful lines it contains the solution to most of man's problems, plus the most important content of all, teachings akin to those of the Bible, showing man how to live in peace and harmony. I feel very fortunate in being allowed to show you some of the Great Pyramid's teachings, its benefits, and its performance. This book is only elementary in that its purpose is to introduce you to the basics of the study of the pyramids. My next book will take you through a progression of fields of which you may only dream. From my experiments and research, I possess knowledge about the pyramids that I will impart in future writings. Such knowledge is far too much for you to accept until you understand something about the basics. That is the background I hope this book will give you. And unfortunately, Les Brown did not get to finish or write those future books because he passed away. I think even before this book, he passed away, and then his folks, the people in his team, maybe his cohorts, his researchers, put this book together after he passed, and this is what we have of Les Brown. So unfortunately, we did not get to see those books of pretty much everything else he knew. Before we can discuss energy, we first must construct something with which to collect it. All kinds of shapes contain energy, even the materials these shapes are formed with, and the very nature of the shapes themselves determines the degree of energy they contain. That is, the shape determines receptibility to energy, and I think that's what Philip S. Callahan states. If you see my other video on him on paramagnetism, he basically says the same. The shape or the form it determines the function. So form follows function, rather. And that's why I'm somewhat interested in cathedrals and religious buildings like that. Maybe they were built with this idea in mind. By shapes, I refer mainly to cubes, spheres, triangles, pyramids, and such. Each shape has potential, but they all have different limits. Whatever we do in our everyday lives, we strive for the best. So it is with shapes and the energy they contain, we should seek the one that offers the most potential. Of all shapes, the pyramid will give us the best performance because it is receptible to the greatest amount of energy. It must be four-sided, of specific measurements and correct angles, and must be correctly oriented. Where do we look for this specific data? We know that the Great Pyramid Cheops at Giza in Egypt performs well today, but undoubtedly nothing like it did when it was complete with smooth surface and capstone. It is now known that upon completion, the Great Pyramid included a capstone and covering of 7 feet of white limestone alabaster. This material, which helped the pyramid function at its fullest, subsequently was robbed from the pyramid for use as building material. Even without it, however, we can measure Cheops, as many have, and come up with enough data to work with. But one must go further than the measurements themselves to understand why these measurements have such meaning. We must go back to the time when a much higher intelligence than ours had a pyramid on the drawing board. The pyramid was not built for its looks, or by accident or coincidence, and it did not simply start to perform to the Atlanteans' amazement. Instead, it was built because they knew beforehand that it would do all of that for which they planned it. In my research of the pyramid, I have gone beyond where your wildest dreams might take you, but for the present, we'll stick to basics, taking you step by step, showing you what the pyramid does and why it works. Well, why and how it works, so that you will be able to follow up my studies in a safe and sensible progression. The word safe may sound a little ominous, and well, it should, because there are dangers in using the pyramid blindly without knowledge of its functions and its great potential. Having set the stage, let's get to the pyramid itself. The pyramid is built with straight lines of specific length and orientation. This is how we arrive at the line proportions. Imagine cutting the world in half at the equator. Try this with an orange. Taking the top half and cutting it into 4 quarters or quadrants. Then taking one of these quarters and taking the peel off. Flatten out the peel and you will have a triangle with curved sides. Trim the curve off without taking anything off the length and you will end up with one face of a perfect pyramid. Note, if you constructed each triangle as the cone shape without squaring the bottom, energy yield as a direct current battery would become dangerous to life unless it was tapped off and used. Having squared each triangle, put all 4 triangle-shaped pieces of peel together and you have performed the northern hemisphere into a pyramid. The bottom corners of the base fit perfectly into the circle of the equator and the sides lead up to its north pole. Using these proportions, any pyramid will function in unison with the natural elements that we enjoy. The natural elements that keep us alive and the world in balance. Change this ratio of measurement and you will drop below par in performance. The further you deviate from this formula, the less performance you will get. Of course, we cannot build a pyramid as large as the northern hemisphere, but whatever size is built, if built in correct ration to the Great Pyramid of Cheops, it will give 100% performance. I will not go into all the details of the Great Cheops, but will mention a few just to illustrate that this ratio was strictly adhered to. Plus, a few more items which indicate that it is not just a beautiful structure, but was planned for a purpose. Cheops covers approximately 13.1 acres and is squared at the base. As we shall see, it must be. It has been measured throughout the centuries by many brilliant men using cubits, metrics, and inches. And after years of controversy as to whose measurements were right, the consensus of opinion accepted inches as being nearest to the correct measurement. The distance around the base of Cheops is 36,524.24 inches, which coincides remarkably with the 365.24 days of our lunar year. If we add together the diagonals of the Great Pyramid's base, we find the sum to be 25,827 inches, a figure which also represents the number of years in the precession of the equinox. The pyramid has 5 points and 4 sides plus a base. The line extending from the point where it would touch the equator up to the North Pole leans in at 51 degrees, 51 minutes, 14 seconds. This 51 degrees is an important thing to understand because it comes up in different things. So 51 degrees, remember that. I'm not going to get into this paragraph, but I figured I'd start it, and if you want, you can read it yourself, because it's just measurements and things like that. So if you want, read it, but let's skip ahead to the next chapter. Interestingly, Ed Les Brown believes that it was built around 10,500 years ago. That's something to keep in mind. As to the why, it is certain that there were many reasons behind the building of these unique edifices: landmarks, aerial beacons, trig points for cartographers, storage structures or temples, but more than anything else, for power of one sort or another. Each day gives birth to some new conception of the intended use of the pyramids. Chapter 3: The Source of Pyramid Energies. In the preceding chapters I have mentioned pyramid energy. Of what does this energy consist of? Whence does it come? Although I have no college degree, I have an extension I have an extensive education and practical experience. I have a practical and inquiring mind and have bent myself to search for some kind of answer to these questions. The answers I have amassed are based on much research of my own particular brand called performance. When you get exactly the same results with man-produced energy as you do with a pyramid, then you can say that at least here is one of the energies of the pyramid. I say one because there is more than one type of energy involved in the pyramid, but the main type is magnetic energy. My theory is at least as good as anybody else's, for insofar as I am aware, no one has been able to prove in a scientific manner what the energy undoubtedly generated by a pyramid consists of. There have been talk of biocosmic rays, cosmic rays, and other esoteric forces, but the plain truth is that nobody knows for sure just what happens inside the pyramid. Because of the experiments I have done and the results I have obtained, both successes and failures, I have abundant evidence to back up what I am saying, what I am going to say. I can prove conclusively that the pyramid receives and collects magnetic energy from the poles, cosmic rays, which is radiation coming in from all angles and equal strengths, and radio waves. And of course, this idea, the cosmic waves and radio waves, more so cosmic rays or penetrating radiation, also comes up in that other book I covered of George Lakhovsky with his Lakhovsky bracelet or cellular oscillation bracelets. He says that is a receiver or antenna of cosmic radiation, which is interesting. If you're interested in learning about that, go ahead and check out my other video on George Lakhovsky. There is enough information on these three energy forms to fill another book, but that would be far too advanced for the beginner. The first two energies mentioned, magnetic and cosmic rays, enter the pyramid through the peak. Radio waves enter through the sides. Since these energies come from many angles, there is a curling that takes place as they are absorbed, and some reports I have read state that the energy swirls clockwise on a sunny day and counterclockwise on a dull day or at night. I personally can find no reason for it to change direction according to light, nor do I recognize this in my own experiments. However, of importance is that it does collect down through the peak and continues coming in until it reaches a certain intensity, or the limits of safety, at which point the pyramid releases all the energy and begins collecting it again. Kirlian photographs taken of pyramid generators show this energy, invisible to the naked eye, being released in jets up through the apexes of the pyramids. The pyramid is said to release 80% of its energy through the peak and the other 20% via the four base corners. Only a pyramid will perform this way, and even then the maximum performance is obtained only by a perfect pyramid. So, when you start to build one, aim at perfection. The nearer you can get to a perfect pyramid, the more you will benefit. Chapter 4. How Energies Affect Living Cells. The main purpose of this small book, in addition to acquainting you with the basics of the pyramids, is to show you how you can grow bumper crops with the use of a pyramid. The magnetic field plays a very important part in plant life, animal life, and of course, human life. Nothing would thrive without it. In fact, nothing could live without it. In our day-to-day lives, we are used to seeing plants and animals of the same type or breed grow to normal size. In addition to periodic occasions in which one or more of these varieties grows far and above the expected, there is a reason for these occasional episodes of supergrowth. It can be explained, or should I say, in various ways. It could be due to the particular piece of soil, well fertilized and watered, or a supergrown plant could be in the same kind of soil with the same conditions as those plants growing normally, but positioned perhaps near a metal fence. In nearly every instance, anything growing by an iron fence will be bigger and better than one nowhere near a metal fence, or near metal. The reason is that the iron fence picks up static or magnetic energy and feeds it to the plant. I remember my mother and grandmother placing large nails in the soil of their potted houseplants because plants thus treated always grew bigger and better. They had no idea why. In fact, if you asked them, the standard answer was that as the nail rusted, the plant fed on it. This reason, and of course, as the nail rusted, the plants fed on it. As you know from other videos, I think I've covered that idea that rust or red iron oxide is a somewhat paramagnetic, which feeds into the magnetic energy into the soil, etc. So the iron from the nail and the red iron oxide, which adds more paramagnetic effect, increases the performance of the growth. This reasoning is fallible, however, because for one thing, plants can only absorb minerals in liquid form, and for another, the rust would kill some plants. Rather, the nails picked up the magnetic energy and boosted the houseplants' growth. I suppose you can see that what I am driving at is that when a plant receives an extra dose of energy to that already floating free in the atmosphere, that dose acts as a stimulant and causes better growth. What really happens is that the living cells are increased in size, and naturally, when each cell is larger, since there are still the same number of cells, the final plant is a lot larger than normal. To illustrate, if I fill a basin half full of dried peas and fill it up with water, by the time the peas have completely soaked, they fill the basin. There are still the same number of peas, but there appear to be many more. Similarly, if you plant a plant in a pyramid, the same sort of thing happens, but there is a difference. As detailed earlier, the pyramid collects magnetic energy and absorbs it to a higher intensity than the nail in the plant pots did. A much greater intensity or strength. And so the end result is you can expect enormous growth. And when this is applied to vegetation and fruits, the plants, as well as their products, are immensely oversized. My own experiments have convinced me that this energy creates a special reaction in living cells of plants, resulting in larger blooms, leaves, and fruits on whatever plants are propagated within the pyramidal shape. The normal life cycle of lettuce, for instance, from seed to maturity is 6 to 8 weeks. Grown under a pyramid, the life cycle is still the same, but the plant is considerably larger. If one allows the vine type of tomato to mature to 6 or 7 trusses under a pyramid, while simultaneously allowing an identical plant to do the same outside the pyramid, giving both plants precisely the same feeding and watering, a startling difference in yield occurs. I should mention that if you put your outside plant too near a pyramid, it will reach for and receive some of the pyramid's energy. So keep it well away to get a fair test. The outside tomatoes would weigh out at approximately 10 to 14 pounds per plant, whereas the plant grown in the energy of the pyramid would produce between 50 and 60 pounds of tomatoes. Not every type of plant grown under a pyramid will produce this increase. This is the average that I have come to expect from tomatoes. A few more averages I have obtained repeatedly were lettuce, 2 to 3 times larger than average, beans 25 inches long by 1¼ inch wide, cabbages, when controls were the 3 pounds each, the pyramid grown plants were 12 to 13 per head. Jesus. The radishes that normally would be the size of a quarter were 4 inches in diameter. Controlled cucumbers that averaged 14 inches in length and weighed up to 1 pound were 21 inches long and weighed up to 4 pounds when grown in the pyramid. A few more averages I have obtained repeatedly were lettuce, 2 to 3 times larger than average, beans, 25 inches long. Same thing. Controlled cucumbers that average weighed up to 1 pound, normally 21 pounds long, and weighed up to 4 pounds when grown pyramid. That warms your whole house and cleans the air you breathe. Energized air in the pyramid also appears inimical to small insects. Thus, there is no need for pesticides to be used within its glass walls. pest-free plants grow to maturity inside, with none of the setbacks plants subject to normal attack from pests suffer in the garden outside. This also means that pyramid-grown vegetables need no washing upon harvesting. The more appearance of such plants is more appetizing than that of those grown normally. Greens are more vivid, and many leaves have a sheen which is noticeably absent from plants in kitchen gardens. Artificial fertilizers will never be used in my pyramid, since many fertilizers apparently are becoming short in supply themselves. The ability to grow plants without their use is a double blessing for all mankind. I will use natural farmyard manures, the best way to regain succulent taste and nutrition that are missing for too long in engineered and chemicalized food. An egg broken out of its shell and left within the confines of the pyramid will gradually congeal and become like plastic, as the interior energy works on its cells harmlessly. The cells do not die nor induce putrefaction. After a period of even weeks or months, these congealed eggs can be constituted or reconstituted in water to the point where they can be eaten with complete safety and taste even more delicious than eggs produced in the usual way. By the way, one peculiar phenomenon I have observed under my large pyramid is the formation of dew upon plants inside. Early in the morning, during all my years of experience with greenhouses, I never noticed dew forming on any plants in conventional greenhouses. This dew gently dissipates as the sun grows stronger, exactly as it would outside. Also, after a recent thunderstorm, my pyramid cucumbers grew 2 to 2.5 inches in a matter of a few hours. Wow. Chapter 5 rather. The use of pyramids for production. The pyramid reproduced on the front of this book is my prototype for larger ones. This one was purely for research and would need to be much greater in size for production on a larger scale, or on a large scale. In tilting the prototype, I encountered and overcame virtually all the problems one can expect to meet in this type of construction. It is nothing like building a house, and whereas a slight difference in measurements can be overcome in a house, it is not possible to make a mistake in a pyramid and carry on building. The particular piece containing the error must be pulled out and replaced correctly, as any mistake is transferred all the way around the pyramid. This test model is 30 feet high along a perpendicular line from ground to peak. The sides from base to corner to peak are 44 feet, 4.5 inches, with a baseline of 46 feet, 10.5 inches. It contains 2 additional floors above ground, and the sum of the areas of these 2 floors equals or is greater than that of the ground floor. Thus, the 2 additional floors virtually double the growing area. Like I said, he's just reflecting and describing that big prototype that was meant to be for a larger, just a regular scale for a smaller scale for a larger one. We can skip that for now. Chapter 6, Food Preservation. In addition to food growth, the pyramid also has application in food preservation. I have read statistics stating that 40% of all food grown in my home country of Canada is lost to putrefaction, whether at the place of storage and transport, in wholesale and retail, or finally in the home. If this happens all over the world, no wonder so many people are dying of starvation, and even closer to home, we find ourselves paying higher and higher prices for what does reach us. These figures mean that either our methods of storage are highly inefficient, or someone in authority couldn't care less, regardless of how this spoilage occurs. However, the state of affairs can and must be remedied. It is both ridiculous and criminal to let it continue, even though I have told how, as well as shown and proven how, to use the pyramids to solve the problem on radio and television and in newspapers. No one in any governmental department has even picked up the phone to inquire about it. It seems that the words govern and mental don't work together. Energy of the pyramid that grows plants so amazingly well can be used also for the purpose of mummification of food, which can be dehydrated and kept in storage for an indefinite period without losing any of its taste or nutritional properties. There are absolutely no ill effects on any food stored in a pyramid. In fact, in many instances, it is far better when reconstituted than it was in the first place. It has the water taken out of it, but it also repels bacteria, and as a result, nothing will rot in a pyramid. For instance, I cannot make a compost heap inside my pyramid. I have to do it outside, otherwise the ingredients in the compost all remain in good shape and will not break down. For further proof, the grain grown in Manitoba today is a direct descendant of the grain found in the Great Pyramid, grain that had been there for centuries and had kept perfectly. The government knows this, but still bemoans the amount of grain lost to putrefaction in granaries. It makes me wonder at the mentality of the people we elect to look after our affairs. Naturally, since I am Canadian, I am referring to what is happening in Canada. It is probably happening elsewhere too. Earlier I mentioned mummifying eggs. I conducted an experiment in mummifying an egg using a pyramid energizer instead of a single wire pyramid. The energizer consisted of small batches of 1-inch high pyramids, 20 in all, positioned in a group. Using such a grid of pyramids provides quicker results than using just one pyramid. I broke an egg into a dish, placed the dish on top of the energizer, and observed what happened in the ensuing days. In about 6 hours, I noticed the lower perimeter of the yolk turning a pale yellow, and this continued through each day, the pale color gradually moving up to the top of the yolk. In the meantime, the white was becoming less fluid, thickening, so to speak. In 2 days, the whole egg was just like glass. The yolk was hard, and the white was now in crystal form. At no time would flies or any insect approach it, even though it was open to them. Flies were as prevalent as usually, but they would not go near the eggs. There was never any smell present from start to finish. I left the egg in this state for about 3 months and showed it to many of my visitors, but then it was time to reconstitute it and try it for taste. I added some water. An egg loses about 30 grams of water in such a period, and left it 24 hours. I then boiled some water with the intention of poaching the egg. When the water was ready, I tipped the egg in, and immediately the albumin turned snowy white and the yolk a perfectly natural yellow color. Had I dropped the egg before reconstituting it, it would have shattered, but now it was simmering away, looking just like an egg fresh from the pen. After cooking the egg, I put it on a plate, salted and peppered it, then cut the yolk through with my knife, and it flooded across my plate. I admit I was not in too big a hurry to eat it, which was funny. But if I was going to prove something, I had to taste it. I smelled the egg, and it was no different from normal, so I ate it. I can honestly say it was one of the nicest eggs I have ever tasted. It seemed to have more flavor than usual. Had this method, or one like it, been used a few months back on a large scale, the hungry world might have benefited from the saving of millions of eggs that went rotten in storage. We could have obviated the sorry spectacle which has come to be known as a Whalen's waste. I know we cannot break all the eggs we produce for storage into dishes and preserve them in this manner. However, they may be preserved even in their shells, which is the way they could be preserved in the millions. I do not know of any food that cannot be treated in such a manner. I have tried preserving every food I can think of, and it all keeps indefinitely, with no refrigeration necessary. Such a means of preservation by the use of the pyramid is better and cheaper, with no losses, so how can it be ignored? As I said before, nobody is listening, but the voices of my readers may help me in what I am doing. I firmly believe that food processing companies could save themselves billions of dollars by using pyramids such as mine, which in turn could mean at least a lowering of prices. Should they wish to cooperate, I am quite willing to place my knowledge at their disposal. Less died before that happened, of course. Chapter 7. How to Build Your Pyramid. I'm only going to read the important parts. I'm not going to get into the specifics of it. If you're interested in building it, you can look up this book. Like I said, the online PDF version is found for free. So let's go over a couple of key things. So here, to begin, then, my pyramid is made from rough lumber cut on and near my own property and milled by a neighbor. As I said earlier, they can be made of any rigid material that will support permanent glazing: cardboard, strong wire, sheet steel, or metal, angle irons, logs, anything that will not curve, and that can be precisely measured and fitted. Nor do they have to be solid for many uses. Open-sided shapes will do as long as all corners are joined and the angles are correct. My pyramid frame is built mainly of wood, measuring 2 inches by 4 inches and 2 inches by 8 inches, undressed, that is, unplanned. Pyramids can be built to any scale as long as the proportions correspond to those of the Cheops pyramid. It is most important that the angles be correct. Here are some basic measurements for a variety of sizes. Like I said, I'm not going to go over the description of the measurements of how to build it. I'll probably just end up skimming through the PDF, so if you're interested, you can pause the video and read it yourself. So let's skip ahead. Grounding. The base, in order to transmit energy properly through the pyramid, must be constructed as a Faraday cage, electrically connected to ground at every point on the foundation. As a practical matter, this is very simple. Before you pour concrete base or lay concrete blocks in a row by row, be sure there's plenty of metal reinforcing rods pounded into the ground. Lots of metal shavings, junk pieces, metal auto parts, old hardware mixed in. Keep that in mind, that description, and all of this really, but that description of metal junk stuff there in the ground and the foundation, because if you stick around long enough, at the end of this video, I'll go over another article of an electroculture enthusiast who did just that. He put a bunch of metal things like equipment under his pyramid energizer, so we can go over that as well. So pour it there before you pour it in the concrete, so it conducts energy readily to the ground or to ground. This will also keep electric smog at bay. Many people are bothered about having read that the base angle must be precisely 51 degrees, 51 minutes, 14 seconds at each base junction, not knowing how to make such minuscule measurements of angles. Don't worry about that. If you use the above measurements and fasten correctly when you build, these angels, he spells it, will be automatically built in. For a 4-foot pyramid, I would advise using steel rods, angle irons, copper pipe, iron pipe, or wood. The smaller pyramids can be fabricated easily from good, strong wire, such as is used to make coat hangers, or with fairly strong cardboard. Naturally, the wire ones would be open and the cardboard ones closed. You can make energizers from a number of such cardboard pyramids placed side by side. Remember, energy from the points of an energizer is more concentrated than that produced by a single pyramid. The energizer is especially good for experiments in general, or for use as an energized surface on which to stand plants. Once the energizer is constructed, place over the top of it, in contact with the points, a sheet of heavy foil or light gauge aluminum plate. The energizer is then ready for use. A pyramid energizer has multiple uses. The one pictured consists of 72 small cardboard pyramids in a top plate of a cardboard covered with foil. By placing the top plate on top of the pyramids and orienting the entire energizer to true north, you can use the energy generated for such purposes as mummification, energizing water, or as beneficial surface on which to have growing plants for outstanding growth. Remember that with all types of pyramids, positioning is all important. One of the sloping sides must at all times be facing towards magnetic north, nor a corner, but the flat face of the pyramid must face magnetic north. Use of a small pocket compass is advised, but one friend of mine aligns his by the North Star at night. In this respect, a pyramid is like a radio. For maximum performance, you must tune it in properly, pointing it right at the transmitter. Similarly, several pyramids oriented to true north and stacked on top of each other will produce increased energy, cell activity, and growth. Chapter 8. Other uses of pyramids. There are so many actual and projected uses for pyramids that I can only touch on a minute fraction of them in this small book. I have used energizers for germinating seeds and then placed the seedlings under wire pyramids. I find this gives extremely good results. On the other hand, I have had relatively poor percentage results from growing seedlings under a wire pyramid from seed. This is in contradiction to other investigators who report good results from raising seed under pyramids. However, when the seedlings are ready to be potted, they are equally successful under or over pyramids. My own objective is to produce more and better food plants. Your own might be superflowers. A further use for the pyramid is to place fruits and vegetables under one when you bring them into the house. They will keep better and, as many people claim, taste much more flavorful than normal with such care and treatment. Water used for growing indoor plants can be placed on an energizer or under a pyramid with extremely beneficial results to the plant. When placed in use, many investigators have reported on this use, claiming that dramatic results can be attained. Some say that such water sprayed on the plants help control mites and other pests. However, as I say, uses for the pyramid other than for encouraging the propagation of plants and legion. My wife, who suffered from migraine headaches, had a severe attack for a week, and during that time she took more than an abundant supply of pills, which proved of no benefit. She plated a pyramid on her head in the early hours of the day, and in about 20 minutes had been relieved of all pain. She said nothing of this to me, but 2 weeks later she suffered another headache. Instead of suffering for a lengthy period, she used the pyramid again, and without the use of pills, the headache vanished again in about the same length of time. She told me about this second time episode. About a week later, she suffered an ordinary headache and repeated the performance with the same result. She now has gone 3 years with no headaches at all. Around this time, I had been working all day in the hot sun, and the back of my neck became quite painful. I tried placing a small pyramid on the back of my neck while I sat still for a while. It produced the same relieving results for me because I believe it increases blood circulation to the affected part. After about 10 minutes, I could feel the pain being drawn out upwards. At the same time, my head felt cold on top, not so cold to the touch, but simply felt cold to me. I mentioned this to my wife, and she said she had the same sensations of coldness, but was waiting for me to remark about them first. I am not suggesting that this treatment will do the same for everyone, but merely mentioning that it worked for me. The pyramid must work in approximately the same way that reflexology works, by increasing electrical conductivity of the cells, which is the same idea as George Lakhovsky's cellular oscillation bracelets or circuits. The elderly mother of a friend of mine, her hands badly crippled with arthritis, was persuaded to place her hand on an energizer. A wire pyramid was put over both hand and energizer for 1 hour. She continued the treatment for a few days, experiencing a diminution of pain and a loosening of her fingers each time. Before she returned to her home in England, she actually sat and played the organ. She played haltingly and rustily. It is true, but she had been unable to play at all for several years prior to using the pyramid. Significantly, her pyramid was stolen at the London airport. Her hands returned to their crippled state shortly after she returned to England. We also find that when we are feeling low and depressed, my wife and I sit for an hour or so, each with a small pyramid on our head facing north. Our depression lifts and we feel quite rejuvenated. My wife and I regularly drink pyramid-treated water. If we are feeling low, we have a snifter of pyramid water, and in a short time we feel a marked lift. On the other hand, if we find ourselves in what used to be described as a choleric state and sit with the pyramid on our head but facing south, our irritability rapidly leaves and is replaced by a calm. Naturally, that would never work if we used the pyramid as a band-aid and a way of avoiding dealing with problems of the day first. A prominent acquaintance of mine who does not wish to be named always drives with a pyramid under his car seat. He claims he feels less bushed after a long drive than he did before he did so. Many investigators have found that by putting a pyramid or an energizer over or under their beds, they experience better and more refreshing sleep. Some of them claiming they need far less sleep than they required before utilizing a pyramid for this purpose. Dogs and cats seem to find the use of pyramids for a similar purpose quite congenial. The cat pet of a friend of ours regularly is found curled up under a wire pyramid, seeming to prefer sleeping under it than anywhere else. The real keynote when trying these pyramid experiments is persistence. As with many other experiences, pyramids do not always work the first time you apply one to a situation, and a person must stay with it and make subtle corrections until the desired results are obtained. Putting energized water into a vase containing tulips caused them to last for about 3.5 weeks. Not only did they last this phenomenal time, but they grew about 9 inches in the meantime. I have never seen flowers grow after having been cut. Many people claim that insect stings stop itching after the application of energized water. This has been our own experience. In another instance, I had a nasty cut on my hand. Immediately after washing it with pyramid water, the pain stopped, and with healing, I had no scar. The cut also healed much more quickly than is normal for me. This book has been an informal and easy presentation of what I have found in experimenting with pyramids. If it inspires you to experiment yourself, I would be delighted. If enough of us are seen to be experimenting, perhaps we shall be able to awaken a few of our dreadnought politicians to a sense of urgency and experimentation themselves. Who knows? In experimenting with pyramids or with growing plants, or tracking costs and labor, you will find it extremely helpful to keep accurate records, a journal to be able to return to, and that's it. The last thing he wants to say here, notes. Everything I need to know about life, I learned from Noah's Ark. 1. Don't miss the boat. 2. Remember that we are all in the same boat. 3. Plan ahead. It wasn't raining when Noah built the ark. 4. Stay fit. When you're 600 years old, someone may ask you to do something really big. 5. Don't listen to critics. Just get on with the job that needs to be done. 6. Build your future on high ground. 7. For safety's sake, travel in pairs. 8. Speed isn't always an advantage. The snails were on board with the cheetahs. 9. When you're stressed, float a while. 10. Remember, the Ark was built by amateurs, the Titanic by professionals. 11. No matter the storm, when you are with God, there's always a rainbow waiting. And if you stuck around this long, here's a little bonus content for you. Or I'll remember earlier in the reading I mentioned, Les Brown mentioned under your Energizer you should build, or you should put metal appliances and things like that to make it better. Here I have a blog from a man called Sam Stonehill on peakd.com or peaked.com. This man seems to be very well versed in electroculture. He posts daily, it seems, pretty recently, 3 days ago, 10 days ago. Let's just go over some of his things really fast. Hopefully he doesn't mind. He seems very knowledgeable, and maybe we'll learn a thing or two. I'm going to skim through it. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Maybe I'll make another video of reading through some of his blogs so that they can point us in the right direction. But like I said, it doesn't have to be made out of, like Les Brown says, doesn't have to be made out of anything specific. Wood will do. So let's skim through these things and we'll see how this man... So you see how all these things are in here? Just loose metal appliances. Under this square is a bunch of scrap metal buried in the earth to channel the energy into the ground from the pyramid. Here we have the final structure in place with copper wire frame, full chakra pendant underneath, and root chakra stone on top. I also put a tower in there for good measure. Really cool stuff. A lot of the things that this man posts I have not yet learned. We'll get into it in just a few seconds. I'm just skimming through these to give you guys an idea of what he posts. Seems to be very advanced in his electroculture techniques. And look at that's pretty cool. You can see his garden there with a bunch of the magnetized P-bed 2 meters from the pyramid is producing, without a doubt, the most beautiful peas we have ever had on this land. Let's skim through these. It's pretty cool stuff. We'll also check out another blog of his in a few seconds here. And you can tell he's advanced because this dude's messing with cloud busting technology, manipulating the clouds to make it rain. Really advanced stuff. Check this out. This is a cool antenna. And I want to tell you about this antenna, which sits in a raised bed in our courtyard, supporting the wall-mounted strawberries and any living beings which happen to be nearby, in the style of Yannick Van Doorn. It has magnetized and a pointer facing south. I think that was actually pioneered by, I don't want to say, it's not George Lukowski, the other man, but it's all right. It may be George Lukowski, who knows. Let's see here. Check out this other thing here. New greenhouse gets its first test. So let's click on this 3 days ago. Like I said, let's look at this guy's advanced blog. I mean, you know, learning about rainbows from Amanda Lawrence in this video, who suggests other things. That every rainbow is in fact a full circle with only one half of visible. That's pretty cool. Let's see where this goes. It's really cool stuff. All right, well, we'll get to that another time. Check it out. Watch. Just skimming through this man's posts, see what's up with his techniques. This is how we learn, just learning from people who are already doing it. The stones behind my head are not just warm by 3 p.m., they are hot, and it is in this time of day I generally close the lid. Next up, I write my latest antenna. This one designed specifically for the hot box area. Really cool stuff. Look at that. That's a beast. Let's see here. The spiral garden, as described in this post. Let's see where that leads us. New land brings dreams of harmonic garden design and electroculture education center. The spiral garden. One of the fundamental principles behind electroculture is that spirals direct the flow of life. I think pioneered by that's the man I was looking for, Justin Christoflo. That's the man I think who pioneered the magnet antenna facing south and whatnot. I could be wrong, but whatever. So it's pretty cool stuff. I'm not going to get into this guy's things right now. I'm just showing you what I found. It's really cool stuff. Hopefully he gives a few resources as to where he learned these things so that I can read it and summarize it for you guys here. Because I love to learn about this stuff, let me tell you. Look at this. The crystals stayed in the water for around an hour and then came home to dry in the sun. Pretty cool. I'm sure if I read through this, it'll give me more of an idea. The pyramid itself is being used to charge seedlings at the moment. Nice. So, pretty cool, pretty cool. I'll just skim through. Look at this, look at this. Here's my beeswax iron earth pipe pyramid, which is currently in a carrot beetroot mustard dill bed. I don't even know what this is. I'm new to this electroculture thing. I'm just sharing my research here. Look at this stuff. Look, and this is another thing I want. Look at how he energizes his water. It's crazy. Look at that. It's nice. Super cool.